Hi, it's Steph, and we're at Lowe's, and they've received a whole new shipment of new perennials, annuals, trees, and shrubs. There are even some great sales on summer annual hanging baskets, Boston ferns, as well as perennials. So let's go ahead and take a look at the May inventory at Lowe's. Friends, if you're looking for some Boston ferns, look at this. Lowe's has a limited time deal, 2 for $20, and these are huge. They're nice, big, lush, and gorgeous. Now, Boston ferns do like shade, so make sure that you don't keep them in too much sun or they will scorch up. And they pretty much like daily water, especially when it gets really hot. Look at the size of this. My friend Doreen is holding it so that we can take a look at them. And these Boston ferns are on sale until the 14th of May. So if you want to get some, now would be the time to check out Lowe's. If you're looking for some of these beautiful blue hydrangeas, look at all of the mop heads that they have in stock. These are the macrophylla type hydrangeas, and the color that you get will depend on the acidity of your soil. If you have a more acidic soil, you will get a blue hydrangea. And if you have a more alkaline soil, they will lean a bit more purple pink, sort of what you see happening here. But these are gorgeous hydrangeas. Typically, they like a bit more shade. These are usually a part sun, part shade location type shrub. And this one here is by Monrovia. It's called Blue Enchantress. Look how beautiful that is. And it is a hydrangea macrophylla. So with these, many of the varieties will bloom on old wood. So you have to be very careful about pruning these because you don't want to risk lopping off that year's blooms. So this one here, partial sun, Monrovia exclusive, it's a reblooming hydrangea, which is excellent. So after this initial flush, you will get secondary blooms. So you might want to hold off on pruning this one. And it likes part sun, keeps soil moist, but not soggy. Hydrangeas in general like a moist, well-draining soil. Hydrangea, hydra. Think water. And it has a rounded growth habit, quickly reaching 3 to 5 feet tall and wide and hardy down to negative 30 degrees or zones 4 through 9. So that's pretty hardy for a hydrangea. Really beautiful. If you have mop head or macrophylla type hydrangeas that are pink or purple, but you really prefer this blue, there is this product here. It's the Espoma Organic Soil Acidifier that is said to turn hydrangeas blue. You could add this to your soil like a fertilizer along the base of your plant, the drip line, to scratch it into the soil. And over a couple of seasons, it will lower the soil pH, it will acidify the soil, and eventually you will get a more blue colored mop head hydrangea. And look at this deal on the Endless Summer hydrangeas, the 1 gallon containers, 2 for $30. And this sale is on again until 5/14/25 here at my store. And what's great about the Endless Summer hydrangeas is that they have been bred to bloom on old wood and new wood. So there is less of a concern about when the proper time is to prune these so that you don't risk losing your blooms. And they have bred these to have so many different varieties now. There's the Bloomstruck, there's the traditional, there's the Summer Crush, so many beautiful color ranges. So the Summer Crush here looks like it's a pink purple variety. These are also compact, so great small size. So 18 to 36 inches in height and 18 to 36 inches in width. Hardy in zones 4 through 9. And again, these are the 1 gallons, 2 for $30, making them only $15 each. So if you wanted to plant a hedge of them, or even just to plant one to try out, this is a great price to do that at. So this is the Summer Crush. Let's find a couple of other different ones. These look really healthy, already budding up. We have some of the Bloomstruck in this 1 gallon size, and also looking really great. The size on the Bloomstruck is a little bit larger at 3 to 4 feet in height and 4 to 5 feet in width. Still very compact shrub, hardy in zones 4 through 9. Now it does prefer morning sun and afternoon shade. Because these are part sun, part shade plants, morning sun is going to be softer. Afternoon sun tends to be really hot and harsh, which can scold your leaves, and then your hydrangea won't be happy. So if you give it the proper conditions, it will thrive for you. And again, a moist, well-draining soil. They also have the original, and it's a reblooming hydrangea, which is wonderful. And this one here gets to be 3 to 5 feet tall and wide. Hardy zones 4 through 9, again, morning sun, afternoon shade. Some beautiful peonies. These are one of my favorite spring bloomers in my garden. Now this here is the Sarah Bernhardt, which is my favorite herbaceous peony. When it comes to peonies, you have the herbaceous ones like these. You have the Ito peonies, which are a cross between the herbaceous and the tree peonies. And then you have the tree peonies. Now these do require some staking. So as soon as they're about 3 to 4 inches out of the ground, you want to go ahead and put up your supports because they have a tendency to get floppy under the weight of these big, beautiful blooms. Just look at the size of these buds. They're huge. Mine in my garden should bloom probably in the next couple of weeks, usually by the end of May. They're in full bloom. And you'll see ants start to form on the top of the buds. Totally normal. They're just there feeding on the sweet nectar. Now, peonies are perennial. They last for years and years, so they are usually a great pass-along plant. There are people who have had these in their family for generations. The Sarah Bernhardt has this large, beautiful light pink bloom. It's very fluffy, looks very much like a rose, and it is so fragrant. It is my most fragrant peony. Now, most of them range in that 30 to 36 inch size. Well, this one says 36 inches in height and can get 24 to 48 inches in width. Very hardy. Peonies in general are hardy down to a zone 3 or negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And these here are in a 2.33 gallon container, and they are $29.98. They have the Sarah Bernhardt, and they also have the Carl Rosenfield, which is more like a deep fuchsia, kind of red. And they do like a part sun to sunny location in order for them to bloom best. Bleeding hearts. Now, these are notoriously known as a shade plant, but I will tell you, any bleeding heart that I have ever seen that is loaded with blooms is in sun. So I do think that this is one that maybe is more of a sun perennial than it is listed as. So in my experience, I do think that they can handle quite a bit of sun and bloom better for it. So these here are $8.98. They get to be about 30 to 36 inches in size. They're a pretty large perennial. So I think this is what I like to call a standalone. Typically, you like to plant perennials in drifts of 3 or 5 because it just looks better when you have continuation in the garden. But with bigger perennials like this, you can get away with one and having a drift of other types of perennials around them. Now, these have really beautiful, kind of like a dangly earring bloom. And when the bloom first emerges, it looks more like a closed heart. You can see that here. And then as they open up, they look like they have a droplet coming out of them, hence the name bleeding heart. But they really are beautiful. Even their foliage that kind of arches really gracefully. A very pretty perennial. On some smaller containers of peonies, and these are only $19.98. So they have the Happy Salmon, and oh, this one's real pretty. The Happy Maroon. And what else do they have here? Yeah, I only see those two. But if you're looking to try peonies in your garden, $19.98, and they have some really pretty varieties. And here are some more part shade, part sun beauties. These are a beautiful foliage plant, and these are heucheras. There's a combination of heucheras and heucherellas, tiarellas, and so forth. So let's take a look. Now, here is a perfect example of why these plants are a part shade or shade plant. You see this here? This is sun scorched. They're getting a little bit too much sun in this corner. They are well watered. I just stuck my finger in the soil, so that's great. That will also help with less scorching if they have adequate moisture. But this is a great way to add a bright spot to a shady corner of the garden. This is the most vibrant yellow chartreuse color. Gorgeous. So this is a Monrovia coral bell called Guacamole, and it likes part sun or shade. It is a perennial. $13.98 for this. It's a good size. You can actually divide this right down the middle. Look at that. You can see a very clear division point here, right down the center. It looks like there's a crown of a plant here and a crown of a plant right there. This is my favorite thing to do with perennials that are large enough to divide right out of the container. You want to just keep them well watered after you divide them, keep an eye on them, and then you get 2 plants for the price of 1. So $13.98. It is deer resistant, easy care, needs 1 to 3 hours of morning sun. It likes semi-moist soil. It gets to be 12 to 24 inches in height and 12 to 24 inches in width. So pretty good size, and hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And this beauty right here I have in my garden, and I love it. It's the Primo Black Pearl Heuchera. Look at this gorgeous deep color and the contrast that it makes with this golden chartreuse color of the heuchera on the side of it. So this is how you add color to a shade garden, friends. Color, texture, and look at that one there. So many more colors. We'll get down there in a minute. But this one here, the Primo Black Pearl, like it says sun or shade, I would give this shade or part sun only. Morning sun best because it is a little bit weaker than that afternoon sun. And this one's a shorter one, 8 to 10 inches in height, and it needs 26 to 30 inch spacing. So it gets wider than it does tall. And it blooms midsummer. So they do send up bloom stalks. You can actually see one here. They have little baby's breath looking flowers. I tend to like them. I think they're nice and dainty and pretty, but you can cut them off if you don't like them and just keep the tuft of foliage. And this one here is a 2.5 quart container for $12.98. And I always love that these tags will tell you what you can pair these plants with. So it says pair with Lugularia, Speedwell, Hostas, Ferns, Hardy Geranium, Violets, and Foamflower or Tiarella. And they're very hardy. Let's see. Hardy in zones 4 through 9 are down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. You see how vibrant this plant is? I don't have a filter on here. This is just what they look like. They're so beautiful. This is the Dolce Cherry Truffles Heuchera by Proven Winners, $12.98, 2.5 quart container here. Again, it's going to say sunshade. I would say part sun, morning sun, or shade. It's also 8 to 10 inches in height, 26 to 30 inch spacing, and hardy in zones 4 through 9, or down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And right on the side of it is this gorgeous kind of peachy colored foliage. And this is the Fun and Games Red Rover. It's a Heucherella. It's also a perennial, 2.5 quart, $12.98. And this one gets to be 6 to 8 inches in height, so it's a bit shorter and also a little smaller at 18 to 20 inch spacing. Hardy zones 4 through 9 or down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Lots of hostas. Look at this. Such beautiful foliage. Now, I removed all of the hosta from my garden because I deal with deer, and hosta are like deer salad, but they are a really pretty plant. If you have a closed-in garden, or maybe you don't deal with bunnies or deer, they are a really great addition for a shade garden. So this is Marmalade on Toast. $8.98 for these. It likes shade, only 1 to 3 hours of morning sun. It looks like it could be a big one. 24 to 36 inches in height and in width. And hostas in general are very hardy, down to a zone 3 or 4. This one's hardy down to a zone 3. And then there is this one here called August Moon, which has a bit of a lighter green foliage. You can see here, this one has a bit of a blue hint. This one has more of a yellowy hint. So very pretty color variation in the foliage. And the August Moon, they're all going to be listed for shade. $8.98 for these, and this one gets to be 30 to 30 inches in height and in width, also hardy down to a zone 3. Now, hostas do bloom. They'll send up bloom stalks at some point throughout the summer, and those bloom stalks, you can either leave them on for the pollinators, which they love them. They're bell-shaped blooms in light purple or white, or you can cut them off and just leave the foliage at the bottom. This one's real pretty too. This might be Patriot, which is a very popular one. Oh, it's Night Before Christmas. The Patriot is very similar in the sense that it has a creamy white and green. But this one, Night Before Christmas, Plantain Lily, part sun shade perennial, $10.98 by Monrovia. And this one's 18 inch height, 30 inch width, hardy down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, hostas are another plant that are super easy to divide. Look at this. You can see here, you can probably get at least 2 plants, maybe even 3 out of that, just by splitting them up. Sure, they'll be a little smaller this year, but the next year they'll get a little bit bigger, and the year after that even a little bit bigger, and you paid for 1 plant and ended up with 2 or 3. Look at this. A lot of times nurseries will also add more than 1 plant in a container so that they look better for sale. See, that's probably like 3 plugs that get added here, and the same here too. So don't be afraid to divide these plants when you get home. Just make sure again that you keep them well watered as they establish. Another gorgeous plant for shade that provides a lot of texture is the Japanese painted fern. I have some of these in my garden and I absolutely love them. Look at this. They are so gorgeous. So these get to be 14 to 18 inches in height and 18 to 24 inches in width, and they're hardy down to a zone 4 or negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, last season I did find that something was eating on my ferns. I don't know if it was deer or bunny, but I thought that they were pretty resistant, so I was surprised to find that. Let me know what experience you have with ferns in your garden. Does anything eat on them? But boy, these are gorgeous. Salvia, one of my favorite spring perennials in my garden. They're a pollinator attractor, and I really love the vertical interest that they provide. I actually made a video on my channel a couple of seasons ago that shows you how I keep my salvia blooming through most of the season. I'll link that below if you want to check it out. But they're also deer and rabbit resistant because they have a little bit of a fragrance that's off-putting to critters, which is great for us gardeners, right? Because we get to enjoy our blooms. Look at all of the buds on here. Now, this is a really vibrant shade of purple. What variety is this? the Noble Night Salvia. They like full sun, and it's important to put plants like this in full sun. The salvias, the nepitas, the Russian sages, because otherwise they have a tendency to flop in the center and not be as upright if they don't get adequate sun. This one is pretty hardy, down to a negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's a shorter variety, only 8 to 10 inches in height and 10 inches in width. Just placed this salvia among this coreopsis just to give you an example of how beautiful this deep purple looks with that golden yellow, and even with the dianthus on the side of it in shades of pink. These three colors are all cool colors, and they look really pretty together. Now the yellow can even be called hot, right? If you pair it with flowers that are shades of red and orange, but in this application, it really lends itself to being a cool color. Now this coreopsis here is called the, DWF coreopsis Nana. And it gets to be 8 to 12 inches in height and 8 to 12 inches in width, hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Here's another beauty. This is Nephophia, also known as red hot poker. And I have a variety in my garden called Lady Luck, which is more of a chartreuse kind of limey green color. Most of them come in these orange, kind of like a creamsicle color scheme. They have a bit of an ombre effect where the color is gradient and a nice spiky habit. Now, once the blooms open up, the pollinators, especially the hummingbirds, really like to get their beak up in there, and the bottom looks like a clump of ornamental grass. So even when they're not in bloom, they still provide a bit of a textural element to your flower beds. Now, this one here is the Pyromania Hot and Cold Nephophia by Proven Winners. It likes full sun, and it is hardy in zones 5B through 9. It gets to be 30 to 36 inches in height and needs 24 to 30 inch spacing. This is a 1 gallon container for $15.98. Look at these beauties. They're so gorgeous. This is Lupine, and this salmon coral color is stunning. Now, more often than not, you will see Lupine in shades of purple. That is the closest to the native variety, but they're breeding these really beautiful colors. And this is such a robust bloom. Just look at it. It's so nice and thick and healthy, and the foliage is even so beautiful on Lupine. They hold on to water droplets so nicely. They almost look like they're magnified. Look at that. So this is a Monrovia plant, and it is called the West Country Towering Inferno Lupine. It likes full sun. It is a perennial, $16.98 for these, and they like 6+ hours of direct sun. Semi-moist soil, and they get to be 1 to 3 feet in height and 2 feet in width. They bloom in summer, and they're hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, a couple of things that I've learned about growing Lupine. I started some from seed. I had the traditional purple variety. They like a well-draining soil. They also have a very deep taproot, so they don't transplant well. So whatever position or spot in your garden that you decide to plant them, you kind of have to be committed to it because they can be really difficult to move. Now, let me know if you've purchased any Lupine in these beautiful colors like this, and if they've returned for you as perennial in your garden. I know sometimes it can be a little bit risky, and they don't always return. The purple traditional ones are very robust, but some of these bred varieties can be a little bit more finicky. Look at these. They look like fluffy marigolds, but they're actually coreopsis. So coreopsis can come in so many different varieties. They're also known as tick seed. They can have single petals like the one we looked at earlier, and they can also be fluffy like this. This one's called the Golden Sphere coreopsis. It likes full sun. It is a perennial, and it gets to be 10 to 18 inches in height and 12 to 18 inches in width. Hardy down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Do you want a super low maintenance plant that doesn't even need that much water and thrives in dry, hot sun? Look no further than sedum. Look at this one. It has such a beautiful blue coloring. This is also a Monrovia plant, and it is the Sun Sparkler Dazzleberry sedum. Likes full sun, it is perennial, and they're also very hardy. So this one's hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It gets 4 to 6 inches in height and 24 to 30 inches in width. So it's kind of like a spreader, almost like a ground cover, really. Very pretty. And here's another workhorse perennial, the Stella d'Oro daylily. Now these are called daylilies because each bloom only lasts a day. Fun fact. But there's always a ton of buds, so you'll get several blooms off of one plant. And even when they're not in bloom, you have this tuft of grassy foliage that looks like an ornamental grass. Now, after they're done blooming, the grass will sometimes go brown, but you can cut it right down to the bottom and then it'll flush out with fresh foliage. Now, deer and rabbits are really attracted to the buds, specifically deers. So if you do have deer where you live, you want to make sure that you spray your buds with a deer and rabbit repellent. My neighbor across the street has a beautiful hedge of these Stella daylilies planted with some nepeta and salvia. And one year he only had the nepeta and salvia in bloom. The daylilies were just foliage. The deer had come through right when they were about to bloom and ate all of their buds. So something to be aware of. They're also very hardy, down to a zone 3, negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. They like full sun, and this variety gets to be 15 to 18 inches in height and the same in width. And look at these beauties. These are digitalis, more commonly known as foxgloves. And yes, they are toxic. The seeds, the foliage, the blooms, all of it. So if you do have children or pets that are likely to be curious about your plants, probably something to stay away from. But if not, they are really beautiful and a quintessential cottage garden bloom. They have these really tall blooms that are really stately and make an impact in the garden. And look at these. The pollinators love them. They zoom in and out of these cupped blooms all day long. Just so pretty. Now, foxgloves, most varieties are biennials. That means that they work on root development and foliage in year 1, and then you get these beautiful bloom spikes in year 2. However, over recent years, there have been some developments where there are more perennial varieties of foxgloves. So if you ever purchased a foxglove at the garden center or nursery and it didn't return for you the following year, it was likely a biennial, and this one is properly labeled as biennial. So if you buy this year, it'll bloom and then it'll drop seed, and you might get a bunch of baby seedlings, but you won't get blooms until year 2. $16.98 for these. Some more really pretty sedums. Now, sedum is also super easy to propagate. If you buy one of these plants and you go to plant it out in your garden and a piece breaks off, just shove it in the soil and it will root and grow another plant for you really easily. And they have it in blue, which is really pretty. And look at this golden one. I actually have one like this in my garden. It's the Angelina stonecrop sedum. Has a really gorgeous golden color. It's evergreen for me in my zone 6B, 7A. In the winter, it takes on more of a bronzy kind of orangey tone. And then as it heats up in spring and summer, it has this really beautiful, vibrant chartreuse green color. So the Angelina sedum gets to be 3 to 6 inches in height, 12 to 14 inches in width, but it will root itself and spread itself around, so it can get quite wide over time. $8.98 for these, and very hardy, down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit or a zone 3. And some ornamental grasses. I've had a few viewers ask if I've seen them out yet, and they are just starting to come out, and Lowe's has a full table. So let's take a look at a few of the varieties. So here's one of my favorite, the Carl Forster feather reed grass. This is a nice upright grass. It stays relatively compact at only about 3 to 5 feet in height. It says 5 feet height, 5 feet width. It does not get 5 feet in width. Maybe over many years, but you'll have to divide it before that happens. In general, these are about 4, maybe 5 feet in height and about 3 feet in width. So pretty compact, nice upright grass. In the end of the summer, it'll start getting these plumes that look like wheat as we transition into fall. So it's beautiful. $14.98 for these. They do like full sun. If they don't get enough sun, they get floppy. I actually had that happen to me for one that I had planted in a spot that was kind of shaded, and I had to move it because it was kind of just sprawled all over the ground. And now it's much more upright that it has more sun. What else do they have here? So this one here is a maiden grass, Miscanthus gracilis, and it has those beautiful plumes that you get at the end of summer heading into fall. This one is a bit larger, 5 feet in height, 6 feet in width, so they get pretty wide. And they're heading down to zone 4 or down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So right now they'll just look like grass, and these are wonderful plants to add into your mixed borders because they add a lot of movement and texture. Now here is one that here in my zone 6B, 7A is only an annual, but I had made the mistake of buying this in the past when I was a newer gardener because I loved the dark burgundy foliage and I thought that it would return for me the following year, and it did not. So just be aware that in some zones, the purple fountain grass is only an annual grass, but look how beautiful that is. You can see how it's easy to fall in love with it, right? It gets these gorgeous dark burgundy purple plumes. So it says that it blooms in summer and in fall, which is when it's sending up these plumes. This is $9.98. They are full sun, and they're hardy only in a zone 9 and up. They get to be 4 to 5 feet in height, 4 to 5 feet in width. So you can plant this in your garden to fill space as an annual, or even in containers is how I love to grow them. And they look so beautiful. This is a new to me one called Dixieland Maiden Grass. Let's see how large it gets. It has a really pretty kind of variegated foliage color with cream and green. It looks a lot like my spider plant. And it's $9.98. This one here is hardy to a zone 5, and it gets to be 4 to 5 feet in height, 3 to 4 feet in width. So nice medium-sized grass. Also looks kind of like a carex, right? But it'll grow. This is going to get a lot larger, where a carex would stay about this size, only about 12 to 18 inches or so. And here's a grass that, while I do love its color, I don't like its growth habit. This is the Elijah Blue fescue. Now, the bunnies went after this in my garden, and the ones that they didn't get ended up growing sort of like a wheat color, almost like it looked like straw, like hay. It looked very dry and messy, and I did not prefer it. But if you don't deal with bunnies and you like this look, it is a pretty colored grass, and they grow in these little mounds like that you see in the photo. So they are hardy, let's see, negative 30 degrees hardiness, and they get to be 10 inches in height, 8 inches in width. Yes, they also have some quart sizes of the Stella d'Oro daylily for $5.48. I really love that they're having the option to get these smaller containers now. They're more affordable, which makes them easier to plant, and they're easier to buy more of them to have drifts because of the price point. So you can buy 3 or 5, and they'll grow over time, and they didn't cost you a ton, which is always a good thing. Let's look at some beautiful trees and shrubs. So this here is a willow, and willows like water. So plant it in a spot where it can get adequate moisture and it'll be very happy. Now this one here is a dappled willow. Look at this gorgeous color. It's variegated, has a hint of pink. It's beautiful. My neighbor planted one in front of a window, and it constantly needs to be trimmed. It gets wild and big. So if you're going to plant one of these, plant it somewhere where it has room to grow in its natural wild form, where it looks the most beautiful. So let me show you the information on this. So this is the dappled willow tree. A nashiki is what they're called. $59.98. You can see there that shape that it has. Almost like an umbrella type tree. And it gets 6 to 10 feet in height, 6 to 10 feet in width. And it is hardy down to a zone 4 or negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And these are $59.98. And then right on the side of it, one of my favorite trees, the Japanese maple. I have quite a collection at this point of probably almost 30 of them, different varieties. And this one's the Bloodgood. These are the first ones that I bought that got me hooked on them. Now the Bloodgood is a red foliage. It's an acer. You can see it has the nice big foliage on them. And these are a part sun type tree. Usually you see this as a focal tree in a front yard as a specimen tree in a landscape. And they're a medium-sized tree, only getting to be about 15 to 20 feet tall and wide, hardy down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit or a zone 5. But they are gorgeous. And this one is $109. It looks like it might be a 5 to 7 gallon container. Check out this shrub. This is also a willow. This is the Iceberg Alley Sageleaf Willow, and it has the most beautiful blue foliage. And right now it's in bloom. It gets these little catkins on them. I purchased a couple of these here on clearance several years ago, and they are doing beautifully. Look what they look like once they're all bloomed out or leafed out. Isn't that so pretty? It looks like sage, like the sage that you grow, the herb, but it's a shrub form. And here's what the catkins look like when they're fresh. And it has medium to high water needs. It likes full sun, silver foliage, and gets to be 3 to 6 feet tall and wide. And these are $27.98 first editions shrubs. And they have yuccas in stock. Now, these are known, as a friend shared with me recently, the sentry plant, because they can last for a long time, because once you plant them, they have such a deep taproot, you're never getting them out. They're also really spiky, like a cactus, and they get white blooms, really tall bloom stalks at some point between summer and fall. My neighbor has one, and they look like an ivory color. Some of them I've seen with a hint of yellow, and it says that they get 4 to 5 feet in height and 4 to 5 feet in width. Perhaps the width is on point with time, but the height, I think, is only 4 to 5 feet once it gets its bloom stalks on them. Now, we're in a zone 6B7A, and this plant is only listed to a zone 7. So if we have a really harsh winter, this might die back. So something to be aware of when you're out shopping, just know your plant hardiness zone. That is the lowest temperature that the plants can withstand where you live. And you can just Google it and put in your zip code and it will tell you what hardiness zone you're in. And those are $14.98. And there's also some proven winners, Puckster Blue Butterfly Bush, also known as Buddleias. Now, what's great about the Puckster is that it's a more dwarf, compact version of the butterfly bush, which the butterfly bushes can get quite large. And this one has a really pretty violet color. Now, these only get to be 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. Let's see here. Yeah, 2 tall and wide. They're hardy in zones 5 through 9, and they need 6+ hours of sun per day. Now, I did lose 2 of these already because the bed that I had them planted in was too moist. So you want to make sure that you have them in a very well draining soil. They actually like soil that leans kind of dry, similar to something like a Russian sage, for example. So these are good price, 1.5 gallon container for $19.98. Now, butterflies love these, hence the name butterfly bush. And once the blooms fade, all you have to do is go in and prune them off and you'll keep getting more and more blooms out of this plant. I have to tell you, this blooms for a really long time. They're slow to get going, but then they will bloom until your first hard frost. Also have the Puckster White in stock, and they are the same size, just a different color bloom. Also 2 to 3 feet tall and wide, hardy zones 5 through 9. And encore azaleas. Now, this is a shrub that I've been interested in for a little while now. There is one called coral sunburst, perhaps, that a friend has in his garden, and he shared with me that it will sporadically rebloom really well throughout the whole season for him. And it's a bicolored bloom, which is stunning. Now, this one happens to be the Autumn Rouge, and let's see how big it gets. 4 feet in height, 4.5 feet in width, and they're hardy in zone 6 through 10. But the fact that typically, azaleas will only bloom in spring and these will bloom throughout the whole season is wonderful. So these are 1 gallon size for $17.98. Look at this interesting plant. Now, this is an annual. It's called shrimp fruit. I've never heard of it before, never seen it, but it is really cool. So let me know if you've grown this before. This is in one of these patio collection type planters for $29.98. They have some hibiscus. They're actually still unpackaging and putting things out, but so much selection right now at the garden center. Such an exciting time of year. Look at this, some more beautiful tropicals with Dipladenia, which is my absolutely favorite annual in the summer. Dipladenia is so low maintenance, drought tolerant, nothing touches them, you don't have to deadhead them, and they bloom their heads off from right now in spring all the way through your first hard frost in fall. You love ferns, but you can't grow Boston ferns because you have too much sun. Well, here's a great alternative for you. This is the Kimberly Queen fern. And the Kimberly Queen has more of an upright growth habit versus the Boston ferns, which has more of a droopy kind of draping habit. But here is the information on the Kimberly Queen fern. You can see in the photo a little bit better what I mean about the upright growth habit of the blades, right? And let's see how big they get throughout the season. It doesn't say, but these are annuals. It says place in full sun by a window with bright lights. You can also have these as houseplants. They're almost a 2 gallon for $24.98. But here is a beautiful fern alternative for all of you with a lot of sun in your garden. And rose season is upon us, and there are so many beautiful roses. Now, I have to be honest, I love roses, but they don't love me back. They don't do well for me in my garden, but it doesn't stop me from buying them and trying them. Look at this beauty. Now, the deal breaker for me on a rose is whether or not it is fragrant. I do have some knockout roses that, while not very fragrant, are very low maintenance, so I keep them around. But look at these, all budded up, the foliage looking really healthy. So these are some true bloom roses, and let's see what varieties they have here. It says disease resistant, heat tolerant, and continuous blooming. 3 really great features if they hold to be true, right? So this one's called True Gratitude. It likes sun. Roses in general like a very well-draining soil and full sun in order for them to perform best. They also need proper airflow. If you plant them too close together, they can sometimes get more susceptible to diseases like black spot and yellow leaf. And that is what I've been learning about roses over the last several years as I've struggled with them in my own garden. So this one here needs 3 to 4 foot spacing, and it is hardy down to -10 degrees Fahrenheit, and it can get 6 feet in height. So a pretty tall, but more narrow, compact version of a rose. Let's see what else they have here. So this one is called also True Gratitude. True Inspiration. Looks more like a salmon color. Very pretty. And how big does this one get? Also 3 to 4 foot spacing, a little shorter at 5 feet in height. And then there's this beautiful, like deep fuchsia purple. Look at that. I don't know if you can tell how vibrant this is on camera, but that is stunning. So what is this one called? True Spirit. Now, the label looks like it would be red, but in person, it looks more like a fuchsia to me. And this one gets to be, it needs 3 foot spacing, 5 feet in height. And all of these are going to want sun and just very light watering. So when the first year that you plant them until they get established, they need water, probably an inch or 2 of water a week. But after that, you can just let the rain take care of them, unless you're going through a period of drought, and then you do have to supplement with some water. And all of these True Bloom roses are $28.98 for a 2-gallon container. And some knockout roses. Now, like I told you, I have these in my garden. These are a true rock star. They're so low maintenance, pretty disease resistant. They are a landscape shrub rose. And all I do to them is clean up the dead blooms and maybe fertilize them once a season, and they are done. That is it. And they do well for me and bloom nonstop from spring. So probably late May, first week of June, all the way through our first hard frost in end of October. So really great, long blooming, low maintenance rose for the landscape. They come in beautiful colors too, some standard colors really. They come in the red. I have the double pink. They also come in coral now, and there's one called Sunny, which is a yellow and white one. So pretty compact as well. They get to be 3 to 4 feet in height and in width, and they're hardy in zones 5 through 11. This happens to be the cherry red. And these are 2-gallon containers for $25.98. See this evergreen here? It is gorgeous and so low maintenance. This is the Blue Star Juniper, and it's one of my favorites. I have about 4 of them in my garden, and I've had them planted for 12 years, and they're only about 3 by 4 in diameter and maybe 18 inches in height, making them a great evergreen accent for the front of a border. They have a beautiful coloring, and in order to have this gorgeous steel blue silvery color, they need full sun. They're also deer resistant. They don't touch them in my garden. And here's the specs on them: 2 to 3 feet high, 3 to 4 feet wide. So the width is correct. The height, they don't get that high. They get maybe 18 inches tops, in my experience of growing them for about 12 years. And they're hardy to a zone 4, so very hardy, down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And these are $21.98 for just about a 2-gallon container. And these adorable rounded evergreens here are the Little Giant Arborvitae. Now, if you like an evergreen, like say a boxwood that you prune into a ball shape, but you don't want to have the maintenance of constantly pruning on it, you can do something like this, the Little Giant Arborvitae. Now, these are known to be also deer resistant, where most Arborvitae are not, but the Little Giant is closely related to the Green Giant, which is a more deer resistant type of Arborvitae. Now, this one here gets to be 4 by 4 in size, and it is hardy down to a zone 3. So very hardy, down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and they like full sun. And look at this, they've extended the deal on their perennials, 2 for $10 in the Lowe's 2-quart container perennials, 2 to 2.5 quart. And the offer is valid from May 1st through May 14th. The last perennial sale that they had was only valid through the 30th of April, so it looks like they've extended it through May 14th. And they have some dianthus, and there's a few other perennials that are part of the sale. So if you're still looking to plant some perennials this season, this is a great time to pick some up. Saw the sale dianthus, and here are some more perennials that are on sale. Some columbine, also known as Aqualegia, and they're still opening up. These are such beautiful spring bloomers. Now these are part sun, part shade perennials, the Aqualegia. This variety is called the Winky Red and White, and 18 by 18 inches in height and width, and hardy down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And then they also have, oh, this is a beauty, Scabiosa, also known as pincushion flower. Now this one looks like a shorter variety than the butterfly blue that I have. This one is called Giga or Giga. And it is, let's see how big this one gets. Full sun, perennial. 12 to 18 inches in height, 12 to 18 inches in width. It's actually similar in size to the butterfly blue that I have. You can see that one's already starting to send up its shoots. And these are short-lived perennials. I actually just picked up a new one because the one that I had for about 3 years ended up not returning this year. So short-term perennials means that they might return for 2 or 3 seasons and then they stop returning. But I love these, so it's definitely worth it to replace every couple of years. They also have some sea thrift. This one's called Splendid's Sea Thrift. And it has this grassy tuft at the bottom with these blooms that are very similar to alliums. They have a ball-shaped bloom on top. This one happens to be pink. And how tall do these get? 21 inches in height, 12-inch spacing. and they're hardy down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. So quite a few options when it comes to the sale perennials. Also, that coreopsis that we took a look at is part of the sale as well. Look at these gorgeous buttery columbine. Isn't that stunning? So pretty. This paired next to some of that Heuchera with a dark foliage, gorgeous in a part shade location. And because I love showing you combinations and I love playing with them myself, look at this. So we have the Primo Black Pearl Heuchera, we have that yellow Aqualegia paired with these blue hydrangeas. These are the Macrophylla hydrangeas we looked at earlier. Such a beautiful combo in a part shade location in the garden. Another gorgeous Heuchera combo, that guacamole that we looked at with, look at this one. It looks like the Primo Wildberry or Primo Rose from Proven Winners. More like the Wildberry because it has a bit of a purple hue to them. But this is actually a Monrovia one called Electric Plum Coral Bells. These are stunning. Look at this color. So deer resistant, easy care. They want 1 to 3 hours of morning sun, semi-moist soil, 8 to 10 inches in height, 16 to 18 inches in width. And they're hardy down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. And large leaves. Look at that. And some Baptisia. Now these are another really beautiful perennial for spring, and typically you see them in the traditional blue color, but there are some really beautiful varieties. Proven Winners has quite a few of them, and this one happens to be the Decadence Lemon Meringue, and it is a bright yellow. They like full sun, $15.98 for this 1 gallon container, and they get to be 36 inches in height and in width, hardy in zones 4 through 9 or down to -25 degrees Fahrenheit. This Baptisia isn't in bloom yet, but I wanted to show you that they're just starting to break bud in that yellow color. But even after they're done blooming, their foliage is really beautiful to use cut into floral arrangements. So if you grow zinnias, sunflowers, cosmos, you can add some of these to your cut arrangements and they look really pretty as a filler. And look at this beauty. This is an annual called Osteospermum. And this I find likes the cooler temperatures of spring and late summer heading into fall. At some point through the summer when it gets really hot, they tend to take a little bit of a break. But they are beautiful. They're a type of African daisy. And the best thing to do with these would be to interplant them with other annuals that really like the heat and do well all summer. So that while these take a little break, you still have something in bloom. And these are Monrovia and they're $6.48 for a quart size container. This cutie that looks like a bunch of little bubble earrings is a fuchsia. These look really cute in a hanging basket so that you get to enjoy the flowers from below because you can see that it has sort of a hanging growth habit. And this is a Monrovia quart size annual for $6.48. And look at these cuties. These are the polka dot plant. Now you can grow these as a house plant, but you can also divide this up and use it as a container in your summer annuals. They look really pretty as a foliage accent. It likes part sun, 3 to 6 hours of morning sun only per day, and these are $14.98. And look at this deal on hanging baskets. So these are annuals, and they have some for sun with the petunias, and they also have some impatient hanging baskets. So the 1.5 gallon hanging baskets in these green containers are the ones that are on sale, 2 for $15. And let's see when the sale is valid through. Also through the 14th of May. So great deal on these. You know, you can also take them out of these hanging baskets and put them in containers, right? Most of the time there are multiple plants in here that you can just divvy on up and put them in window boxes and planters and so forth. Oh, and look at this beautiful coleus. So pretty. That is also part of the sale. 2 for $15. So they have petunias, impatiens, and coleus. And the petunias come in different colors. So they have that beautiful fuchsia color. They also have a really pretty light purple blue color. Lots of great options. And on the 2 for $15, 1.5 gallon impatiens, they have them in white, in this coral color or salmon color, as well as this purple pink color. These are some really pretty hanging baskets with Proven Winners annuals in them. There's some lobelia, some calibrachoa, and petunias. And even the basket itself is really pretty. It has a look of almost like an iron. And these are $44.98. The recipe in this container is Bahama Beach. So even if you wanted to do coordinating containers, you could just look at the recipe that they used, the Super Tuner Bordeaux, the Super Bells Lemon Slice, and the Laguna Sky Blue Lobelia. So this is actually a Super Bell. But this Sky Blue Lobelia, I grew for the first time the Laguna Blue Sky last season. it was a rock star. It did beautifully for me in a shady location. It bloomed its head off from right now in spring all the way through fall. I actually styled some pumpkins around the planter and this was still in bloom. These beautiful annual sunflowers. These are the Monrovia Sunbelievable Brown-Eyed Girl Sunflower. They are beautiful and these will bloom and bloom all summer long. You just want to make sure that you deadhead them regularly. So anytime that there's a spent bloom, just follow the stem down, cut it off, and then you will keep producing bloom buds on your plant. But these are really beautiful. Let me show you the tag so that you know what you're looking for. It's the Sunbelievable Brown-Eyed Girl Sunflower by Monrovia. These are $14.98. They are a full sun annual. And they get to be 32 inches in height, 40 inches in width, and they bloom summer through fall. So they get pretty good size. You can even plant these out in the landscape instead of using them in a container. They have so many racks of these ferns, but they are flying out of here. Every person I look at has them in their cart or is grabbing some. So I don't know that they'll be around for long. Look at these 8 packs of annuals for only $3.98. Beautiful big leaf begonias. Nice shiny foliage, so pretty. They have some in shades of rose and even white. That's a great price on those. More of the 8 packs for $3.98 with marigolds, and they also have impatiens, different colors of impatiens. Those look nice and healthy. And let's see what else they have here. Petunias, look at that. They have some pink petunias, purple, white, some in the red and in the violet that almost looks blue if you wanted to do some Memorial Day containers. Some of this salmon color petunia also. Some celosia, also 8 packs for $3.98. Really pretty colors. And some of the annual salvias in this shade of red. I also have these 12 count packs of coleus in different shades of coleus for $13.98. Adorable puffy marigolds that we talked about that looked very similar to the coreopsis that we saw, right? So they have the French marigold in yellow and in orange for $2.48 for this 4-inch container. Cordyline spikes, which make a great centerpiece in your annual containers for $5.98. I love planting these with mandevilla around them. They look really pretty. And they also have the Dracaena spikes. These are $3.58. And some ground covers. These are quart-size ground covers by Monrovia. They have, this one here is the dead nettle or lamium. And they're $4.48. This is the pink pewter. They have really beautiful foliage. It's a very pretty ground cover. I love that one. And they also have some bugleweed. This one is also known as a Yucca. This one's Caitlin's Giant, has really large foliage. So pretty. And then they get really pretty purple, like a violet purple bloom this time of year. Look at that. These are already starting to push out their blooms. The ones in my garden are blooming. They look really beautiful. These are also $4.48. Looking for some trailers for your containers, here is some variegated periwinkle. These are vinca vines, $3.48 or $3.58 rather. Miller, this makes a really beautiful accent as well for containers, and it likes cool weather. It will do well in spring, summer, and in fall. And in some areas, it will even overwinter and might return for you next season, even though it's classified as an annual. $2.48 for these. Sweet potato vines, some more great trailers. $4.98 for these. They're Monrovia. They have these sidekick black sweet potato vine. This looks really pretty in a light colored container. And if you have a dark colored container, you can go with this chartreuse colored one, which is called the Sidekick Lime Sweet Potato Vine, and also $4.98. Well, that brings us to the end of the May inventory here at Lowe's. I hope that you've enjoyed checking out what my store has in stock, and I hope that you can find some of these varieties near you. Now, I did go ahead and take advantage of that perennial sale and picked up 3 of these beautiful light colored buttery yellow columbine at $5 a piece, and I can't wait to get them planted. So thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.